Welcome to a USAID Soybean Innovation Lab webinar. This is the next installment in a series of webinars involving the Soybean Innovation Lab Soy Dairy Network, and today's topic is packaging techniques to improve soy food shelf life. My name is Maggie Cornelius, and I am the Program Manager for SIL's Human Nutrition Research Area. I will be monitoring this webinar today. Everyone for joining us today. And at the end of the webinar, the audience is encouraged to field its questions to all of today's presenters using the chat box in your GoToMeeting panel. And for those who can't stay the whole time or can't be in attendance today, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website. We will also post contact information for today's speakers, as well as some additional resources pertinent to soy food packaging. Today's webinar is sponsored by the USAID Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Soybean Value Chain Research. The mission of the Soybean Innovation Lab is to provide researchers, extensionists, the private sector, NGOs, and funders operating across the entire value chain the critical information needed for successful soybean development. Specifically, it looks at the role of the soybean can play in reducing poverty and malnutrition, and it provides the technical information to those who develop soybeans in South America, Africa, and Asia. One extension of the Soybean Lab's activities is the Soy Dairy Entrepreneur Network. The network is a virtual network of soy entrepreneurs around the world which exchanges information about the technical and business sides of a soy food operation. The Soybean Lab facilitates the sharing of information, and it also provides a variety of network services, including on-site technical training, new product development, packaging designs, food and labeling certification, new and business development, and soy cooking and utilization training. If you would like to get involved in this, please don't hesitate to contact us, and we will get you tapped into this valuable network. Today's webinar will feature the 5 core members of our Soy Dairy Entrepreneur Network. In 2015, SIL funded the startup of 5 soy dairies in Ghana and Mozambique. These dairies are run by local entrepreneurs who have extensive backgrounds in food science and technology and are now directing their skills towards developing micro-enterprises centered around soy. They run their dairies on a daily basis, producing many types of soy food, including soy milk, soy yogurt, tofu, and okara. The entrepreneurs sell their soy products to schools, hospitals, local merchants, and directly from their operation site, and they also administer local nutrition trainings, educating their communities about the nutritional benefits of soy. What is especially significant about their work is that they record their operation inputs and outputs, which is valuable data that SIL is using to develop optimal business models for small-scale soy dairies. SIL also provides entrepreneurs with resources for improving operation, increasing production, and developing their marketing and sales. The goal of this webinar is to provide entrepreneurs, development agencies, and soy dairy funders and donors a starting point for thinking about packaging. It will provide a general overview of the common types of packaging options available. It will also emphasize how packaging is a critical area of an enterprise operation and how packaging decisions should depend on a soy dairy's specific context. Please note that the information provided in this webinar is not meant to apply to all soy dairy sites. When making packaging options, the soy dairy entrepreneur must consider his or her business environment, operating context, equipment, customer base, and distribution channels. The soy dairy also must incorporate good hygiene practices into their packaging procedure. Food safety is a priority over packaging, but packaging can also help ensure food safety. So before that as a general picture of what is going on within this network. I'd also like to note that primarily we are talking about packaging used for soy milk, but some of this information also can apply to soy yogurt. So as for packaging materials, primarily our soy entrepreneurs use plastic and glass bottles. But there are also a variety of packaging options out there. Plastic bottles can be HDPE, which is cloudy plastic, or PET, clear plastic. Some of our entrepreneurs use plastic cups or tumblers with lids. And then there's also the glass bottle option, and you can get recycled glass or new glass. And then our entrepreneurs have also experimented with metal cans and plastic bags. As for bottling methods, all of our entrepreneurs do their bottling by hand, but there are a variety of bottling methods. Even though everyone is doing it manually, they will speak about their different types of methods that they use. Later during this webinar, I will also discuss SIL research that demonstrates the impracticality of a mechanized, full pasteurization bottling system for small-scale dairies. As for transportation, transportation materials should also be considered in the suite of packaging materials. Oftentimes, soy food will have to be transported to their customers, and additional packaging is necessary to make this possible. Many of our entrepreneurs use ice chests filled with ice or ice packs for transporting their soy foods, and they put these in cars or bicycles to transport them to their customers. Finally, there is quite a range of shelf lives among the foods produced by our entrepreneurs. Some of their foods have a shelf life of 24 hours. Some last up to 2 weeks in the fridge. Some last over 3 months in a fridge. Some of our entrepreneurs have also found ways to keep their soy foods good on the shelf without refrigeration. Now I would like to introduce our first guest speaker, Hart Jansen, the Vice President of the nonprofit Malnutrition Matters. Hart is calling today from a business trip, so we are most appreciative that he can be with us today. He will provide us with an overview of preservation and packaging options that Malnutrition Matters has developed over the years as an essential technical resource for soy dairy enterprises. Hi, Hart. You are now unmuted.
Okay, thank you very much, and so you can sell for a small profit on top of that, so 35 cents a liter when you use the bulk method, direct to the consumer. And when you're distributing in this fashion, it's best to use a large thermos-type cooler with a spout, so you don't have to dip into a bucket to serve the consumer. And one thing that can extend the shelf life of the product, and this is both for unrefrigerated and refrigerated solutions, is to add a small amount of baking soda or sodium bicarbonate. And again, not to be confused with baking powder. So you're using baking soda. Because this increases the pH, that is, it lowers the acid level, it can add some hours of shelf life preservation because the milk spoils as the acid level rises. The next method I'm going to talk about is plastic bag filling. So as soon as the soy milk is cool enough to handle, you can fill it into plastic bags, and you can use a very inexpensive heat sealer to seal the bags, and then it's recommended to put those in a cold bath, either distributing direct to the customer or storing in a cooler with ice, so you can keep the product cool, and you could get a couple of days of shelf life if necessary with this method. And as the plastic bags are only cost a few cents each, you're adding only a marginal amount to the price to the end user. in addition, of course, to the cost of the ice. So again, those two methods do the best job of reaching the consumer at the base of the pyramid where the malnutrition is the worst. Moving on now to plastic bottles. So again, using simple plastic bottles, and these can be reused water bottles or any other plastic that you might find. Again, of course, we want to make sure that either used or new, the bottles are as clean as possible. So you want to clean them out and put them in a boiling water bath for some minutes. And best results are obtained if just before filling, they also are rinsed with a bleach, a 5% bleach solution. And in this case, when you're filling plastic bottles, the hotter the soy milk when you're filling, the better the result in terms of shelf life. And again, we in this case are depending on refrigeration to give us, some days or even a week or more of shelf life if the product is refrigerated at 5 degrees centigrade or so. And again, plastic bottles, depending on whether they're new or used, again, can cost 5 cents, 10 cents in that range. So we're getting to see a significant additional cost. If we move to HDPE plastic or glass bottles, the cost of that bottle or plastic will be almost equal to the cost of the soy milk contained in it. So you're doubling the cost of the product. And again, hot filling can be done with these containers, and you can get again, depending on the quality of the refrigeration, you can get 1 to 2 weeks of shelf life. So, so the next method, number 5, pasteurization. You can use the same containers, plastic or glass, and again, using hot filling into sterilized or clean, very clean bottles. And after filling and sealing the bottle, we then pasteurize it by putting it in a boiling water bath for 20 minutes or 20 to 30 minutes. So that gives us the best result in terms of pasteurization. But we strongly recommend, when using this technique, that it's done in combination with the cold chain or refrigeration. It can yield some days of shelf life without refrigeration, but it's subject to occasional failure in that some of the bottles inevitably will spoil, and it's impossible to predict which ones are spoiling. If you're using bottles that are like soda bottles, it's very hard to detect spoilage without opening the product. So finally, the most complex and expensive method is sterilization. And I want to be very clear that sterilization cannot be achieved without bringing the product to 120 degrees centigrade. So that, of course, requires a pressurized method. And to obtain true sterilization, we recommend using an autoclave. And these, of course, are very expensive. You could theoretically use the pressure cooker that's provided with the soy cow, but the bottle, if you're using glass bottles, unless you're using soda pop bottles, which are very thick, glass bottles are prone to breaking because of the sudden decompression when pressure is released. Using an autoclave, you can have a gradual release of pressure and prevent breakage. So when you're attempting to do sterilization, or you're doing partial sterilization by boiling the sealed product for 20 to 30 minutes, that does not achieve true sterilization, and it's prone to occasional failure, including, of course, the risk of botulism. So we strongly recommend that we either have pasteurization with a cold chain, or we do true sterilization using an autoclave. So I'll conclude there, and I'm happy to answer questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hart, for that overview. That was very interesting. And now we are going to transition to our the SIL soy dairy entrepreneurs. Now we are going to welcome Frank Pedgett, the Managing Assistant of Soymilk Soy Dairy at the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, Food Research Institute in Accra, Ghana. Frank, you are now unmuted, but you need to unmute yourself to speak to us.
This is Frank from Food Research Institute, and I'm going to give a presentation on packaging. Food Research Institute is located within Accra metropolis in a suburb called Shiashi, about 10 minutes drive from the international airport. In Ghana, to be able to sell commercially, there is the need for you to register your products with the Ghana Standards Authority and then the Food and Drugs Authority. And we've been trying to secure that registration for some time now, and we've not been able to get it. But recently we got it last month. So that period we are producing, for that period we're producing about 75 mils of milk per week. But now that we've gotten the certification, we are trying to increase it to 120 per week, and then we'll move on from there. So the procedure that we use for the production or the bottling is we buy the new bottles from the company called Cane M at the industrial area in Ghana, and then the bottles are then immersed and cleaned in a brine that is a 10% salt solution. The milk is then cooled to a temperature of about 70 degrees Celsius, because at higher temperatures the milk will cause the bottles to deform. They are tightly closed, and then they are immersed in a cooling bath, and then when it cools down, we immediately place them in a freezer for the temperature to drop down to 5 degrees Celsius. Then we transfer them into a fridge or a refrigerator. Then we send it out for sales through the cold chain. The packaging, the bottles that we are using are the bottles that we use are the PET bottles. They are plastic PET bottles, and then they are we use 1 liter, 500 ml, and then 330. The packaging, the packaging is about 50% of our total cost of production. The list that we use for the bottles is the caps, the plastic caps. That's what we use to close the bottles immediately after after filling the bottles. The milk is transported to our customers in an ice chest, and then we put ice cubes on them, and then we put them in a van, and we transport them to our customers within our working area where we are working. There are some offices around. So we put them in a van and then we send them to the nearby offices and then we sell them. We also have customers within food research who patronize our products. We are experiencing some difficulties with the shelf life of the product because it only stores for 2 weeks in the fridge. Apart from that, it begins to go bad. So that's the problem. We want to extend it for like a month or two in the fridge, but apart from that, I think we are okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Frank. Next, we would like to welcome Dr. Joseph Osei, a professor in Ghana and the managing director of AA Pure Soya Milk in Agona, Ghana, which is also in northern Ghana. Professor Osei, you are now unmuted.
All right. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Thanks very much and greetings to everybody. We started about 2 years ago and tried the bottling, the plastic bag, and we found that in conditions where you don't have regular power supply, it becomes very, very difficult. So we decided to look at the ways where we could preserve the milk, if possible, without the cold or without refrigeration. So the item 5 and 6 described by Mr. Hart was examined. After extracting the milk, we recook with the soy cow to 120 degrees and carefully put the hot milk in recycled bottles. But first, the bottles must be acid washed and then heated or partially sterilized to 100 degrees Celsius before we discharge, we use it for the bottling. After putting the hot milk in the bottles, we cap by hand using metal lids. We get our bottles from a company called Cottage Italia in Accra. Also, the bottles come with the lids. We find that if you do this procedure very carefully, in some conditions, the milk can stay at room temperature for 3 months. But under refrigeration, you are sure that at least the milk will keep for 3 months. These conditions are necessary if you are targeting large markets, and especially where refrigeration and electricity supply is irregular. Certainly, our major problem with this procedure is the cost of LPG gas, because you have to double cook the product. The recycled bottles are not very expensive, but altogether, the recooking and the bottles will take about up to 30 or 40% of the total cost of operation. The quality of the milk is not seriously affected, and we believe that this technique is very useful to us, even though we need a lot of care to do the procedure. If the bottles are good, that is, there are no cracks or no defects, the milk really keeps very well. But it's sometimes very difficult to detect whether there are cracks or defects on the bottle. It's only after the processing. But by and large, we find this procedure very useful, especially where you are now beginning to organize markets. If you produce on a large scale and you are unable to store, and the product is not bought immediately, then you are likely to lose a lot. And we find that the cost of this procedure is better than sometimes losing an entire batch of milk. So this is where we are, and we hope that we'll also learn from other people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Osei, for that presentation. Now we would like to go back because Flora Amagloh is on the call now. So Flora, I'm going to unmute you, and would you like to give the presentation now?
Okay, so my name is Flora Amagloh, and I work with Savannah Agricultural Research Institute in the northern part of Ghana, and I'm the manager for the Soy Plus Facility Center. Okay, so basically what we've been doing so far is producing soy milk to take down to communities and to schools, and also producing soy milk and other derivatives for research works. At the moment, we are not doing any commercial production yet because we are waiting to get the place in order for the certification from the Food and Drugs Authority. So coming down to the packaging procedure that we use for our soy milk. After we get the milk from the cooker and it's squeezed out of the press, the milk is pressed, we let it cool down to about 80 degrees. And this is done by quickly putting the stainless steel bucket in a deep freezer and taking it out. So after this, we then bottle the milk through a funnel and a cap into plastic bottles. And the capacity of the plastic bottles is 330 ml each. That's what we've been using so far. So through a funnel, we pour the milk into the bottle, and then it has a screw cap, which is also plastic. The total percentage of operating costs which goes into packaging is about 1/5. That's about 20%. And we do not liaise with any company directly to get our packaging bottles. We buy them from the open market. And in Tamale, these bottles are catching on because most people are using it to bottle local drinks. People are now avoiding the soda options and going for local drinks like bisap and ginger drinks and fruit drinks, etc. So the bottles are catching on. So now it's very common to get those kinds of bottles in the open market. So after chilling in the refrigerator, which is usually overnight, early in the morning when we are about to go to the communities, we pack the bottles in an ice chest, and then we add ice packs like ice blocks. We tie, what we do is just tie water into small bags and put them in and freeze them overnight. So by the morning, we get the blocks and then we put them together with the milk in the ice chest, and this is how we transport it to the communities or to the schools or wherever we are going to. We haven't done any tests yet with shelf life of the milk in ordinary room temperature, like on the shelf, but in the refrigerator it can go up to about 3 days. That's if the power is stable and it's on constantly. The main strength of this packaging procedure that we use is that it's cheap compared to glass or using Tetra Pak or any other kind of packaging. It's cheaper, so it beats down the operation cost. The main disadvantage, as we have seen here, is that the shelf life is very short.
Hi, Flora. Thank you very much for that presentation. And now, next on our agenda, we have Edison Rawadzi listed as speaking, but it does not look like he's on the call right now. So we'd like to move to Asa Maria Tam, based in Mozambique.
Okay, I think we are in the center of Mozambique, in the province which has very much population and which have a lot of problems with nutrition. So when we started this business, we aimed to school programs and to social responsibility programs. So we have clients that buy milk for children. And our main production goes directly to children every day. We produce the milk in the morning, and then we give to the children, because the schools here are, you have one shift in the morning, one in the afternoon. So we do 2 lots, one lot, and we transfer the picture that has a little crane on it. So and all kids are provided with cups that they keep themselves and wash the next day. And we have been very worried about the shelf life, and we don't want to risk that people get sick of the milk. So we want people to drink the milk the same day. And when you give it out like this, there is no choice for them to save it. They have to drink it, or it will be sort of thrown away. And so that is how we work for now. And we have been very afraid of selling the milk in anything, because we are afraid that people will keep it and then it will go bad, and then they will blame us selling bad milk. So that is how it is. But of course we would like to expand to sell also to private people milk. But for the time being we are very restricting doing that. We are selling in bottles to institutions, to companies that feed their labor with the milk, like a breakfast every day. That we do as well. And we sell also milk in our own shop, but then we have the control and tell the people that they have to drink it the same day. Yeah, that's how we work with the milk.
Thank you very much, Asa. Next on our agenda, we have listed Lucas Majuju of Sosoya in Chimoio, Mozambique speaking, but he is not on the call today. So it looks like Edison Rawadzi is logging on right now, but it doesn't look like he has a great connection yet, so we're going to wait on him. I guess we'll try him right now. Edison, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi, Edison. Would you like to start your presentation now?
My name is as she said, Edson Rawadzi. I'm working with the association Palawa Sokoti. They are situated in big buyers, and usually this one is packaged in 10-liter buckets with taps, which are then used to empty into the 400 ml tumblers, which are plastic tumblers, for the sales in the markets and at schools. Basically, the bulk are selling. Then half of the milk is transformed into yogurt, and this yogurt is packaged in 350 ml HDPE bottles. These are also hand-filled. First, they are washed in a disinfectant, and they are closed with some screw lids. From my calculation, I've seen that the packaging is costing about 12% of the total price of the bottle of yogurt. The association has got a car, so when they are selling these products, they put them in cooler boxes, and then they put ice in there, and then they distribute to wherever they are supposed to distribute. The shelf life for yogurt, for the samples that we did, we put in the fridge last month, we have discovered that yogurt in the fridge is able to last up to 1 month. But as for milk, even refrigerated, is taking a maximum of 2 weeks. From the samples that we have been studying, the yogurt in the fridge is taking up to 1 month, and the milk is taking a maximum of 2 weeks, and then it starts to show some signs of some strange flavors. And then I talked about the fact that the packaging was taking about 12% of the total production costs.
Okay, thank you, Edison, for your presentation. Now we are going to move on to the final part of our presentation. At the end of this, the audience will be able to send in questions to us to ask to all of our guest speakers who you just heard from. But first, we'd like to speak about the question of a mechanized full pasteurization and bottle system. So to speak to that, SIL recently conducted research in Mozambique about this question, this option for soy dairies, and SIL analyzed whether a soy dairy in Mozambique with a monthly output of 3,400 liters of soy milk and soy yogurt would benefit from a mechanized bottling system. SIL researchers concluded that a mechanized full pasteurization bottling system would be impractical for a small-scale soy dairy for a variety of reasons. The first being that process control and assuring food safety along the cold chain would be even more difficult with this machine. Secondly, having this machine would increase costs for the equipment and for the bottling materials. Thirdly, maintenance of equipment would be difficult and parts availability would be limited. So in addition to maintaining your soy processing equipment, you would also have to maintain this bottling machine. And finally, a full ultra-high temperature system would be cost prohibitive given the scale and price point of soy foods. And it is SIL's mission to produce soy foods that are acceptable, affordable, and nutritious to low-income populations. And this is also the customer base for many of our soy dairy entrepreneurs. So this system would increase the price of their soy foods and not make them as accessible to low-income populations. Finally, we would like to provide a brief price analysis of packaging for soy dairies. As discussed today, packaging is a very large component of a soy dairy's production costs. Our operators report that packaging takes anywhere between 20 to 50% of these costs. And on the slide here, you can see a breakdown of one of our operators' production costs. And packaging is the largest expenditure, taking 39% of packaging costs. And here's a table of what some of our operators pay for their packaging materials. As you can see, prices vary by location, but it also varies by material. As Hart discussed earlier today, glass bottles are more expensive than plastic bottles. And here is a price analysis of two of the main packaging options featured during this webinar. One method is to use glass bottles and double boil the milk after production before filling the bottles, and then boiling the bottles after filling for about 30 minutes. The other method that we discussed is to fill plastic bottles with hot milk, seal them immediately, and refrigerate them. And this data that we're presenting here is from our soy dairy's weekly reporting about their production costs. So we took 2 dairies in a similar location, in this case northern Ghana, and they both have similar average daily production outputs. This chart displays their average daily soy milk output and the price of the bottles they used, and their daily expenditure for electricity and gas. This chart also displays the different shelf lives that these different methods produce for the milk. We normalized their daily soy milk production and adjusted their energy expenditures accordingly to make this a clear comparison. And we can see that the glass bottler pays more for glass bottles and uses quite a lot more gas because of the double boil and boil to seal methods. And so from this price analysis, we can put a few things in perspective. Changing to glass bottles, if the person using plastic bottles were to do so, would mean a 25% increase in bottling costs for the entrepreneur currently using plastic bottles. Double boiling the milk, as well as boiling the milk for 30 minutes after filling, would mean that the entrepreneur would have to pay 8 times more for gas. However, using this method, the glass bottle method instead of the plastic bottle method, could increase shelf life by 30 to 90 days. So this concludes the presentation section of our webinar, and we would like to thank all of you for listening, and now we would like to open up the question and answer session. So anyone in the audience who has questions for anyone who presented today, please type them in the chat box in your GoToMeeting panel. And I will read the questions aloud and read the person who sent them in, and then I will direct that question at the appropriate person. Hi, Sally Martin. We see that you have a question. Would you like to ask it?
Yes. Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
You can hear me? Great, I
Yes.
thought no one was hearing me. Yeah, my question is that from the time I've been working on soy foods for the last 5-7 years, and working on soy milk with rural communities in Uganda, from the west to the north and eastern parts of Uganda, I still realize I see it as a challenge in terms of being able to produce soy milk sustainably and profitably in rural communities, considering there's no electricity and all that. And basically, I've been able. I missed the first part of the presentation, but from what I've been able to see, I still see that it's still a challenge across Africa. In most countries, whoever is trying to commercialize soy foods, and to me, that's when now I ask, a real question: that is it really sustainable for soy milk to be one of the most pushed forms of soy products to be able for communities? Because what's the main thing which we're looking at here? We're really looking at how communities can be able to access soy protein. Okay, so to me, and I pose it to everyone, really, is it really the most sustainable form of having communities access soy protein? I'll come back with an additional question after the responses, or with also my personal perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally, for that question. I'm going to open up the microphones for our presenters today, and they can feel free to respond accordingly. So I'm unmuting Hart and Frank, Edison, Asa.
So this is Hart Jensen. I'll take a first attempt at a brief answer. I think with low cost plastic bottles and using ice and chest coolers for distribution, I think we can have a reasonably low price for the consumers. And a sustainable operation. And I would like to further suggest that if there is some milk left over at the end of the day that didn't sell, one possibility for using that product and keeping some good profits is to reboil that leftover milk and make yogurt, which can be sold the next day. So I think that can make sure we don't waste any product and keep the business sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hart, for chiming in to answer that question. If anyone else would like to answer that question, they can write into the chat box. But next we have a question from Agnes Anyawin, and she's based in Tamale, Ghana. And she has a question again about something that Hart said. She asks if you could elaborate on how you use baking soda to improve soy milk shelf life. Hart, I'm going to unmute you again, so if you can, could you please respond to this question?
Sure. Yeah, so when you're making the soy milk, the typical ingredients that you add would be for one batch, which again, depending on your specific production, could be anywhere from 13 to 15 liters of soy milk. You usually add about 500 grams of sugar and approximately 30 to 50 grams of salt. So you can substitute some of the salt or all of the salt with baking soda. So again, you use 30, 40, 50 grams of baking soda instead of the salt. And again, the baking soda does have a salty flavor. And so if you do that, then again, you can extend the shelf life of the soy milk, whether you use refrigeration or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Hart, for that answer. It looks like Professor Osei is also raising his hand. Professor Osei, you're unmuted. Do you have a question, or would you like to respond to a question?
I want to respond to the question and then the conclusions you came with the work you did at East Africa. Yes, I want to say that the soya milk is very sustainable, even at the high cost of production that we are producing with respect to gas and then the bottles. When we are able to produce 8 batches a day, we have quite appreciable profits. So please, the process is sustainable. The issue is ability to have a large market and then able to keep the product for at least 1 to 3 months. If you're able to do this, certainly many people are willing to consume the milk. Then with respect to the conclusions we came about large-scale bottling, there are very similar products on the market in Ghana and are selling. And I believe that maybe in East Africa your conclusions are correct. But in Ghana, I may disagree with you on the basis of the fact that a similar product is on the market. And if they are not making any profit, you wouldn't get a product on the market.
Thank you for your response, Professor Osei. That was very interesting. And it looks like we have one final question here from Bibiana Amalia Ferrari, and she is asking how to enrich soy milk with calcium. This is not something that SIL knows very much about, but if Hart or any of the other operators or anyone in the audience can speak to this, please let us know. Hi, Hart, you're on.
Yes, sure. Let me. I'll try to give an answer. I mean, on some of our projects, we have used a bulk micronutrient premix to add to the soy milk, so that we have a fortified soy milk. We haven't used calcium, but we've used a premix that includes iron, folic acid, vitamin B, vitamin A, vitamin C. So I imagine that there's nothing that would prevent a premix from including calcium or including just calcium. Again, because you've got a warm or hot liquid, most everything is highly soluble and will distribute evenly very quickly with soy milk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hart. It also looks like Victor Antwi has his hand raised. Hello, Victor. You're unmuted. Do you have a question, or would you like to respond to a question?
I'd like to make a comment. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. It's in response to what Dr. said. People are making profit. You say people are selling. It means that they are making profit. You say if you have a small scale running and you have a high overheads, definitely you'll make profit. Those who are making profits and they are still selling are those who have been able to cut down costs by reducing unit costs, as well as also increasing volume so that they can minimize the cost, and also having a very good marketing strategies to reach out to a lot of people. Many a times people look at other products, look, they are importing a lot, it means that they are making profit. They're able to cut down because of economies of scale. So until the producers in Ghana decide to expand so as to improve on the economies of scale, they wouldn't be competitive. Number two, the cost of soybean on the market should be compared with that of soybean elsewhere that they are sourcing from. The production base of Ghana, the yield is less than 2 tons per hectare, whilst in other places they are talking about 3 tons per hectare. So all these are part of the ingredients towards having the higher cost of production in the country. So to be able to improve on that, with DLC's packaging is very good. I mean, as Professor said, if you could increase the shelf life, it could store longer, people patronize it. Now, people are health conscious. Instead of going for ordinary milk, people prefer going for soy milk. So there are some of the opportunities out there. So what I'd like to suggest is that there's a need for us to look out for how we can get into expanding production to enjoy economies of scale. It means that we need to drive down unit costs per unit. So by that, we can probably be very competitive for the market. As USA, I think that we are looking forward to how we could drive down unit costs of poultry feed, for instance, which soy, as we all know, contributes up to about 35% of that. So if there are some innovations through these projects to drive down costs of producing the kilo of soybean by improving on the yields, among others, then I'm sure soy milk production will be very competitive on the market. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those insights, Victor Antwi. It looks like Professor Osei has his hand raised again. Hi, Professor Osei.
Yes. So already we know certain soybean varieties which produce more milk than others. And if you focus on these high yielding varieties, which give us a lot of milk. That's one way of cutting down the cost. And for us, we are thinking of growing the crop ourselves and then organizing our growers. And this will bring down the cost of the soya milk. And if you're able to expand our market base, we think that soya milk is a good business, or would be a very good business in Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Osei. It looks like Agnes Anyawen sent in another question. She asks, is it advisable to use flavors or sweetener when packaging soy milk? Does it have any impact on the final product in terms of shelf life and nutritional value? If anyone can answer that, Professor Osei has his hand raised. Hi, Professor Osei.
Certainly, we use vanilla flavor and another flavor. We also have a ginger flavor product. And these do not affect the shelf life, but improve the acceptability of the product. Certainly, yes.
Thank you, Professor Osei. If anyone else has a response to that, they can raise their hand. But otherwise, it looks like this concludes our questions. Although it looks like Sally Martin has his hand raised again. Sally,
Okay.
you have a comment?
Yes. Yeah, just one more comment. Probably may just not be directly in line. Pretty much, one of the colleagues talked about that products are on the market, and definitely if a toy product is on the market and has been there for a year, that means that's sustainable. And I beg to differ on that issue, that not always, because I've worked in this business for quite a while, and at times you can basically just keep running with the business, hoping that it can be able to get there at some point. So I'll give you an example. In Uganda, soy milk is imported and is sold in a couple of Ugandan supermarkets, but that does not mean that it has a very big market. Okay, so but bottom line, one of the key comments which I had was that ultimately, why are we doing all this? What is, what's the motivation for all these aspects of soybean innovations and okay, trying to struggle with shelf life aspects? To me, I think it further boils down to we're trying to see to it that we're able to get the cheap protein source to the communities wherever they are. Ultimately, whether it is in form of soy flour or whatever it is, we're trying to get protein to the communities. So to me, my takeaway to the team is that yes, I mentioned about sustainability, and some of the fellows I mentioned that yes, it's extremely sustainable, but I'll tell you for the fact that in many parts in Uganda, we don't have the ice boxes which you can be able to spread around. So, and then it all boils down to which would be the best vehicle, depending on the circumstances, of making sure that you have a cheap protein source reach to the rural communities. I want to share one of the examples which I've used in Uganda, whereby the model which we are using is no longer the model just of soy milk alone, whereby right now we're taking up a model whereby we're combining soy milk, soy flour, and soy nuts. So when we work with the communities, we give them a tripartite aspect of product portfolio, and then with that, they're able to choose which would be the most relevant or the easiest form of soy protein to be able to take on with the communities. And this is pretty much working very well, and we're seeing community transformation and improvement in nutrition through the communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sally. Well, now this brings us to the conclusion of our webinar. Thank you to everyone who participated, the presenters and the audience. This webinar was recorded and it will be posted on SIL's website in the coming days. And we will also post a spreadsheet of different packaging material providers in Ghana and Mozambique and I guess West Africa and East Africa. And a list of the webinar presenters and their contact information will be posted on the SIL webpage as well. So if you have further questions to ask any of them, you can email them directly. We also encourage all of you to follow us on Twitter, friend us on Facebook, and visit us at our website, soybeaninnovationlab.illinois.edu. And there you can sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date about other SIL events like this. And please contact me, Maggie Cornelius, with any follow-up questions about this webinar, or if you would like to get involved with the Soy Dairy Entrepreneur Network or with the Soybean Lab in another capacity. Thank you again to everyone. Have a great evening.